And Great Britain kicking deep into Australian territory. Australia won the toss and running against a very slight southwesterly breeze in very fine conditions at Lang Park in Brisbane. There's Beatson, the Australian front row forward, as Great Britain forwards swarm in for the tackle. Number 10, Thompson, is the tackler. Walters in the dummy half position, and there's Sate, the Australian second row forward. No changes in the teams advertised. Great Britain captained by Chris Heathcote. Back to Graham Langlands, the Australian skipper, kicking into the breeze down to the Great Britain 25. It could be a good kick, not quite into touch, as it's gathered by Redfern, the right winger for Great Britain. Inside Great Britain's quarter line, and Dixon, the second row forward. A great crowd here, a capacity gate of almost 40,000 people at Lang Park in Brisbane for the first rugby league test of the 1974 series between Great Britain and Australia. Clausen playing it back to the hooker, and that's Thompson, and the half-back across to Mills, the giant front row forward, who played a few seasons of club football in Sydney. That's Watkins' kick down to the Australian quarter line, and Waite, the right winger for Australia, is in possession about 30 metres out from the Australian line, and that is Cronin, the centre. Fine sunny conditions here as O'Reilly, the Australian prop forward, one of the props with Beatson, is tackled 12 metres short of the halfway mark. Here's Beatson, and long pass from Walters. That's Coote racing through the lock forward. Fed back quickly to Richardson, the 5'8", having his first rugby league test. That's Orr on the quarter line. So Warren Orr, the Australian left winger, will play the ball back. A good start to Australia, some bright attack. Rodonicus, the halfback, former Australian captain. Sate and O'Reilly, and that's Higgs, the young Queensland player, having his first test match from Roma. A big crowd of people here from Roma today to see Ray Higgs and Arthur Beatson, two former Roma players. At long pass out wide to Langlands. Oh, just a very high tackle. It was Nichols, the lock forward.
Yes, and Nichols is going to be penalised for that very high tackle, and it's going to be quite an easy penalty for the Australian side. And what a fantastic atmosphere. The stage is set for another great test, reminiscent of 4 years ago when Australia defeated Great Britain by 37 points to 15. And in that test, it was the two big forwards, Beatson and Morgan, who paved the way for a great Australian victory. And here we see again Beatson and O'Reilly, two big front rowers for Australia, but they are matched by equally big men in Terry Clausen, number 11 for Great Britain, and Jim Mills, number 13, who actually outweigh this great Australian pack.
And this should be an easy 2 points for Australia to open the scoring in the first test. Play has been in progress for just on 3 minutes. And Graham Langlands, the Australian captain coach, having his last season in international rugby league, sets this one only about 18 metres out, almost in front. And it's there. Australia lead 2-0.
I'm sure in his heart Graham Langland's very happy to see that first kick go through the post, and I think we've seen in the first 2 minutes something we're going to see in a lot of the game, and that is that Langlands is going to come into this back line. He's going to stand between the inside centre and outside centre. He's going to cause an extra man and give the wingers room to move.
Great Britain running from the southern end of the ground in this, the first half, after Australia won the toss. That's O'Reilly. Higgs in the dummy half position. There he is. You see some strong runs from that blonde-headed Higgs throughout today, and this is O'Reilly again. Now Beatson, Arthur Beatson, standing wide of the ruck. There he is.
Here we see Great Britain getting a penalty against the Australian front row for not packing correctly. They were packing at an angle, and Great Britain given a chance to get 2 points.
Temperature of about 22 degrees Celsius. The kicker is Clausen. Pretty good attempt, and it's there.
Yes, and Langlands was standing underneath the post right from the time that ball left Clausen's boot, and he was clapping it for an excellent kick, and Great Britain right back in this game.
And so it's 2-2 after 7 minutes of play.
And the wind has started to drop, and I think with the Australians going into this wind and the wind blowing towards this left-hand sideline, we're going to see Langlands and, of course, Jeff Richardson. Jeff Richardson, the Queensland 5'8", who's such an excellent line kicker. They'll be putting the ball down into Great Britain's territory.
And that's the Great Britain winger, Redfern. Only 5 metres out from the Great Britain try line, Bridges the hooker, conspicuous with that strapping round his head, and it's a penalty to Great Britain.
Beatson being penalised for a spear tackle.
Spear tackles were outlawed in rugby league quite a few seasons ago. And it's kick for touch by Watkins. Takes play 10 metres short of the halfway mark, still in Great Britain territory. Bridges, the hooker, and Thompson. Australian ball, Beatson. The two Roma boys there, or former Roma boys, Beatson, Higgs in the dummy half position, and there's O'Reilly. Walters, Beatson, and Higgs. Midway between the Great Britain quarter line and the halfway mark to Rodonicus, and there's Beatson again. And Richardson. Wait to play it back on the Great Britain quarter line. Rodonicus and Sate. Powerhouse second row forward who's had a lot of experience playing for Australia. And we're playing the 4 tackle rule today. There's the kick from Rodonicus. High into the goal mouth. And Great Britain to clear the ball as it comes out to Redfern. And it's not knocked on. The ball was knocked back, but Great Britain only a metre out from their own line with Millwood, the 5'8", in possession. And there was a dummy from Clausen towards Thompson. Bridges, the hooker, will distribute the ball to Thompson. Beatson, one of the tacklers, with Sate and also O'Reilly there in number 13 jersey. So Clausen's pass and Nichols. The third tackle indicated. Playing the 4 tackle rule today, and that's Watkins. That's the international rule, and it's out on the full, so play will come back to where the kick was taken. The scrum to pack down just inside the Great Britain quarter line.
And it's quite noticeable already, the two differences in these two great packs. Watch the Australian forwards as they receive the ball from the play of the ball. They're running wide. Beatson running wide, much faster than their big front rowers from Great Britain. But Great Britain using the centre of the field, coming up the middle of the field, and the Australian defence doesn't have to move too wide.
And Great Britain ball, that's Millwood, the 5'8", Watkins, Hesketh, the captain of the side in number 4 jersey. And a good tackle from Cronin. Into touch midway between the Great Britain quarter line and the halfway mark.
Good work by Cronin, because he could see what Hesketh was doing, and he followed him across and was able to put him out over the sideline. Good thinking.
Score is 2-2 after 10 minutes of play. Penalty Australia.
And the Great Britain half-back, Nash, being penalised for throwing the ball in behind his hooker's foot.
Penalties, by the way, stand at 2-2. And Australia fine touch inside the Great Britain quarter line, only about 15 metres out from the line. Beatson. And this time it's O'Reilly slipping into Rodonicus. Only 15 metres out. Can Australia score from here? Here's O'Reilly running onto it. Between 16 and 17 stone, these Australian front row forwards, about the same weight as their opposite numbers. That's Richardson, the 5'8". Played rugby union test matches for Australia, but this is his first league test. This is Higgs. And Sate. A long pass with Waite. He put his foot into touch. The touch judge's flag is up.
And obviously Australia prepared to throw this ball around. We've seen one very long pass already from Fulton, and there we saw another long pass, beautifully picked up by Waite, and he must have just put his foot out over the sideline.
And into the scrum again. Score is 2-2 after 12 minutes of play. A penalty, Australia.
And the Great Britain front row being penalised for not standing up straight, and actually it's going to be the hooker Bridges who's penalised for not binding correctly. He was right down on the ground.
So it's the Australian captain, Graham Langlands, to take the kick at goal, 10 metres in from touch and about 2 metres in from the quarter line.
And at this stage, it does look as though the Australian players are much faster on their feet. They're running faster. As I said before, the big forwards are running wider from the rucks, and they're making the Great Britain fellows chase them in defence. Great Britain are using the centre of the field, but this is what we saw in the Queensland game, where Great Britain came good in the second half.
Langland's kick, and he make it 4-2. Waved away over the dead ball line, so Great Britain will bring it back to the quarter line.
In the game against Queensland, the Queensland forwards were able to hold this Great Britain pack, but in the second half there was those little passes, and especially Dixon. Dixon started to really hit form, and he was the one who really pierced holes in their defence.
Watkins' kick, and it's taken by Langlands. 10 metres inside Great Britain territory. That's Sate in the dummy half position. O'Reilly, there he is. And now Coote. Losing the ball, the Australian lock forward, and very nearly losing it, knocking it on. Scrum to pack down, 12 metres, 10 metres inside Great Britain territory in centre field. The score is 2-2. He had one effective scrum, and that was won by Great Britain. So it's 2 scrums to Great Britain, knocked on by the lock forward Nichols, and another scrum will pack down.
It's a very unusual front row formation of the Great Britain side. Once the prop forward goes right in front of the hooker Bridges, Bridges even looks as though he's sitting in the second row at times.
And it's Nichols. Great Britain in possession midway between their quarter line and the halfway mark. Now to Thompson. Losing the ball, and Great Britain picking it up. The ball had been knocked on. Australia diving on the loose ball, but they too knocked the ball on. Knocked the ball forward, which is a knock on, and the scrum to pack down just inside Great Britain territory. We have viewers today throughout Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia to this first Rugby League Test match. And lock forward Coote, former Australian captain in the World Cup series, very tall and very fast player, and that's Rodonicus, the halfback. Elwyn Walters, the hooker in the dummy half position, this time O'Reilly and Higgs. Walters, Rodonicus and Beatson out wide, the big prop, and that's his pass to Langlands. 10 metres short of the Great Britain quarter line to Rodonicus and O'Reilly out wide this time. Australia using these big forwards, standing wide at times. That's Higgs. Close to the Great Britain quarter line in centre field. Now Sate. And put down, but picked up by ruled offside, Beatson.
Beatson was definitely in front of the man who knocked the ball on, and of course he had to be penalised. Now the work by Beatson and O'Reilly is going to be very important today, because they're the 2 pivot forwards who can get these forwards going. We see Sate and Coote, who are definitely running forwards. We see Higgs, who is a great worker, works all the time but doesn't get much of a pass. In fact, I'd think that we'd hardly see any passing from Ray Higgs today. Mainly it's head down and make a good lot of territory, but not a very constructive forward. So it's work by O'Reilly and Beatson that's going to be important.
And the penalty to Great Britain takes play midway between their quarter line and the halfway mark. Penalty taken by Watkins, and that's the hooker Bridges now, as Mills, the heaviest prop forward on the field. Heaviest footballer out there today, Mills, at just over 17 stone. 8 metres short of the halfway mark, and there's the other prop, Clausen. Plenty of tacklers for Clausen. Bridges and Nash, that's inside is Nichols, rather outside of him, Nichols. On the halfway mark in centre field, Clausen's past Dixon. Fulton is the tackler in number 3 jersey for Australia. We haven't seen anything of him so far of the match because the ball hasn't really got out to the backs very much. But now it comes to Thompson. Pass astray. Hesketh, the captain of the side, gathers, and Richardson is the tackler with assistance from Waite. The other Australian tackler was the right winger. Penalty to Great Britain.
Bad work by the Australians, especially by Jeff Richardson, who was standing on that blind side. And referee Lancashire always stands back to 5 metres, saying virtually you've got to stand behind me to be onside, and Richardson was about 1 metre in front of him. Great Britain, I'd say, have realised that their work down the centre isn't bringing results, and they're starting to throw the ball around now.
A long punt kick from David Watkins, centre, and it takes play pretty close to the Australian quarter line, about 7 or 8 metres outside the quarter line. Clausen, and wasn't meant to go there, but there's the winger in possession, is Bevan. Clausen and the half-back to Thompson. Millwood, the 5'8", from dummy half position outside the Australian quarter line. Nichols. Great Britain not clicking properly yet. We've seen some loose passes from them. That's Nash, and now Clausen. Very tough, vigorous player. Clausen takes a lot to stop. Only 15 metres out from the Australian line. The score is 2-2 after 18 minutes of play as the pass comes to Nichols. Look at Hesketh racing through there as the ball bounces back and then into touch.
And a very dangerous one, and I'd say what's going to happen is it's going to be ruled that Great Britain knocked that ball over the dead ball line and it'll be brought back to the 25. But Australia very lucky there. Langlands definitely couldn't take it on the fill, nor could the winger Waite, and they both waited for the ball to bounce, and it did bounce awkwardly and back into a Great Britain player's hands, who knocked it on fortunately, but I'd say if he'd have picked it up cleanly, he still wouldn't have been able to put it down before he reached the dead ball line. But that was a good kick by Nichols.
Back to the quarter line, Langlands drops out up to the halfway mark. Watkins trapping it soccer style so as not to knock the ball on, and tackle on the halfway mark by Walters. So that's Redfern, the winger, in the dummy half position. There's the halfback Nash. Crashing tackles. O'Reilly was one of the tacklers and the other one was Sate. Now to Clausen, and put down by Bridges. A high difficult pass, towing it through is Millwood. But the referee has ruled the knock on much further back in play, about 8 metres short of the halfway mark. The score is 2-2 after 20 minutes of play.
Referee Lancashire obviously waiting for the advantage rule there, but the ball had gone far too far back before actually Langlands did pick it up, and it was no advantage to Australia to receive the ball back there.
And Australian ball, that's Cronin, the centre. Looking at the scrums favour Great Britain by 3-2 at this early stage of the match. And Coote. Someone in the crowd with a klaxon not very far from us. You'll probably hear in the background as Beatson sends it to Higgs, and Cronin, centre, away to Fulton, back to Walters. Just inside Great Britain territory now. Neither side has really made any very strong attacking move as regards getting the backs into action. That's Richardson getting it back to the ground to his halfback, Beatson again. Long pass, a bit of a risky one too, but it's gathered very quickly by Cronin. The flick pass has been knocked down. Meant for Waite. Great Britain ball. Nichols, the lock forward, in possession. Midway between Great Britain's quarter line and the halfway mark. Now to Thompson. And that was Beatson flying over the top. And Nash. The halfback to play it back to Bridges. Now Clausen and Dixon. That's a fullback Charlton standing right up behind the movement. Higgs was underneath, and the player over the top was Sate. Mills. Loose ball again, picked up by Coote. Knock on. Can't work that one out. He looked to pick it up cleanly.
No, actually what had happened was it hit an Australian player's hand as it went through. It was actually knocked down by an Australian player, and that's what referee Lancashire is awarding. Even though Coote picked the ball up cleanly, it had hit an Australian player's hand before that. But the Great Britain players are obviously depending on their weight and their size to stand up in tackles and try and slip this short pass away to supports who are coming close to them. The Australian players now being penalised for raking the ball back in the scrum. Against this Great Britain type of attack, we can see Australia depending on their speed, throwing the ball wide, running wide themselves, and they're trying to depend on their speed, and they've got a very fast set of forwards, especially the back row players.
This is Watkins. Penalties favour Great Britain 5-3. The scrums Great Britain 3-2, and the match stands at 2-2. A penalty goal to each team. Play has been in progress for 22 minutes. A kick from Watkins takes play inside the Australian quarter line, about 15 metres out from the try line. Bridges, the hooker, to Clausen, and that's Nichols and Dixon. The half-back Nash, in the dummy half position. Now Clausen, and there's 5'8" Millwood. The two at Australia previously. And Bridges sending it, or looking to send it on for a moment, tackled by Coote. Great Britain only 15 metres out from the Australian line. That's Nash, dummy half position, Clausen, and Mills, the big fellow out wide. And that's Beatson round the top in number 11 jersey to wrestle him to ground. Clausen and Nash. Watkins. Australian ball. Safe to play it back. Higgs. O'Reilly. And it's a penalty, Australia.
Great Britain back, standing up within their 5 metres. And Great Britain depending a lot on their straight up and under now. We've seen already Nichols put a good up and under up. We saw one just then, and it is quite a dangerous move. They're really testing Waite, the left winger, and Langlands at fullback.
Langlands on his quarter line. Doesn't gain a lot of ground, but makes sure of it. Takes play midway between the Australian quarter line and the halfway mark. Walters, Beatson, O'Reilly, and Coote. Over the halfway mark. Orr was inside him, the very fast winger. There's Orr in the dummy half position, but he couldn't get it away to him. Away goes Orr. Now Fulton. He's the player, Mr. Magic of the Australian team. Hasn't been able to get into action very much so far in this game. So Riley. Higgs. And slipping it to Coote, who loses the ball, gathered by Sate, but the knock-on to be played.
And some dangerous attack by the Australian players. Great play by Coote down the blind side. It came from a set move, and Beatson knew exactly what was going on. And Coote using the old speed that we've seen before. Unfortunately, not able to slip that pass back inside to Warren Orr because Warren Orr was unmarked.
Great Britain ball. It's the halfback Nash. Thompson and fullback Charlton. Charlton is 32 years of age, the same age as the Australian fullback and skipper Langlands, and this is Nichols. On the Great Britain quarter line in centre field, the score is 2-2 after 25 minutes of play. 15 minutes left in the first session. That's Clausen, and back to the other big fella, Mills. Beatson, number 11 jersey, coming in to assist with the tackle. And the kick from Millwood. Waite, the Australian right winger, takes it as it didn't find touch. To the halfway mark in a good run. Walters, and the halfback is Richardson, the 5'8", Cronin. Very tall centre. Langlands, the fullback, is right up there. Cronin, O'Reilly, and Fulton. To very well to get it to his halfback, Rodonicus. Fulton moving into the dummy half position. Walters actually there now, and there's Fulton. Bowled over after he got the pass away.
Well,
Penalty Australia.
Fulton's down on the ground. I was actually watching Bobby Fulton because Bobby Fulton is definitely a master at this. He definitely hit a Great Britain player, but the Great Britain player didn't hit him, and Fulton has gone right down. I've no doubt Fulton will stay down for a while, but he'll jump up very fit.
Yes, I was a bit surprised to see him stay down, but nevertheless, it's a penalty to Australia, and this is Langlands, the Australian captain, being called out with Hesketh, the Great Britain captain, being spoken to by Don Lancashire. Well, Langlands was coming up to take the kick, apparently. Receiving attention from the strapper, just behind the goal kicker, Langlands. But he's made a pretty quick recovery, and all's well. So after 28 minutes of play, the score is 2-all. Graham Langlands attempting this kick. It's not far from centre field. He could kick it. And it's there.
Well, probably we could say that was 2 points to Bobby Fulton, but Bobby Fulton, was definitely good work. He was definitely hemmed in. There was absolutely nothing he could do. There was no way in the wide world he could break through that type of defence that the Great Britain players had. Even the kick, I'd say he had no chance of picking up, but he definitely did run into a Great Britain player. There was nothing that the Great Britain player did to him deliberately, and Fulton getting 2 points.
Millwood to kick off. Great Britain running from the southern end of the ground, and this is the first half. That's Higgs. Australia playing in green and gold, and Great Britain in their red, white and blue jerseys. Beatson. Walters behind Beatson, and that's Rodonicus. Australia citing some gaps in the Great Britain defence on the blind side, and they're starting to take advantage of it. This is Fulton. And away goes Fulton. Up to the quarter line, he's got the full-back to beat. Charlton holds to him as he was looking inside, but couldn't get the pass away. Fulton only 15 metres out from the line. That's Warren or O'Reilly. And Beatson turning it back quickly to Coote. 8 metres out from the line. The third tackle indicated from referee Don Lancashire. 1 tackle to go for the scrum if Australia hold possession. And Rodonicus trying the little kick. Sate tries to get to it, and gathered by Great Britain. It's the winger Bevan. But the knock-on is to be played.
Well, that was great attack by Fulton. One wonders really how Bobby Fulton can step outside a player, go round that player, and still beat a player with speed. We often see a player break through a back line with straight and sheer speed, but Fulton can go round a player and beat him, and that was a great run down this left-hand side, just unfortunately unable to get his pass back inside.
The score is Australia 4, Great Britain 2, and play has been in progress for 29 minutes.
Great Britain certainly haven't got their forward pack working the way they'd like to. I've no doubt that they'd like to see their Mills and Clausen standing more in tackles and slipping the pass away. 2 fast men like Colin Dixon. Colin Dixon, of course, played rugby union before he came into league. He was a centre, can step and can run very well. But the forwards aren't running off these big forwards, but full credit to the Australian defence. They're knocking these big fellows down before they can get the pass away.
Injured Great Britain player was the fullback Paul Charlton. The Great Britain ball from the scrum, and that's Nichols. Stepped out of the tackle over the quarter line. Langlands takes him well. Assistance from Higgs coming in over the top. The Great Britain players pointing at Higgs. This is Dixon. And racing in comes O'Reilly. Dixon doesn't seem to like being tackled very much. Certainly doesn't like the heavy tackles, and that's Bridges. Nash. And this is Mills. 8 metres short of the halfway mark. Nash. Thompson, a long pass to winger Bevan. Nash tries and finds touch as the Australian player tried to get to it. It was the winger Waite, and it goes into touch of his hands, so it's a scrum to pack down 12 metres inside Australian territory.
And I think Wade probably did the wrong thing then, because that ball would have definitely gone out on the full, but because he touched it before it went out, it had to be brought to where he touched it, 10 metres back in field.
A capacity gate here today of well in excess of 35,000. I think it possibly nearer 40,000. Really packed Lang Park for this first Rugby League Test match in the 1974 series between Australia and Great Britain. This is 10 metres inside Australian territory. It's a penalty to Australia. Australia leading 4-2.
And the penalty going against Bridges, and I was meaning to say before the previous scrum, just watch how Bridges lies down. It's very, very obvious, especially when we get a broadside view from the cameras across here, and that's what the penalty is going to Australia for. But unusual to see that Australia are down in penalties by 5-2, because especially when we remember that last week, Johnny Lang, who is reserved for Australia today, completely outhooked Bridges by at least 2-1.
And that's Coote. Higgs, midway between Great Britain's quarter line and the halfway mark. Here's O'Reilly. Some storming charges now from the Australian forwards. That's Coote, and the pass to Fulton. Just outside the quarter line, Australia in a strong attacking position. Walters in the dummy half position. There's Beetson trying to make ground down the middle. Walters to Adonicus, Richardson, Cronin, the centre. Good tackle, and that's Watkins, number 3, adding a bit to the tackle. Sate slipping it back then. Radonicus back. There's O'Reilly crashing straight down the middle. Great Britain defence could be in trouble here at any time. Australia starting to break them up now, as Great Britain have stolen the ball, and it's Hesketh, the captain, in possession. Just inside the Great Britain quarter line to Dixon. That's Higgs over the top in number 10 jersey. First man there was Radonicus, the Australian halfback. Nichols. And a lot of uncertainty coming into the Great Britain side there, and they didn't seem to know what to do with the ball then. This was Watkins in possession. The 5th tackle. The third tackle, I should say. They're playing under the 4 tackle rule today, of course. And now that is Clausen.
I'd say the Great Britain forwards are starting to become very upset. As I said at the start of this game, they're using the down centre of the field method. They're only running a little bit, then they're passing to players who are very, very close. It means that the Australian defence doesn't really have to reform. They tackle and they go back, and Great Britain aren't testing them at all.
Penalty Australia, 10 metres in from touch, and on the Great Britain quarter line. Langlands will no doubt take the kick at goal. He'll be kicking into a very slight southwesterly breeze.
Halfback Nash, the one who's been penalised. Halfback Nash seems to throw the ball in incorrectly at times. Of course, the rule is that it must be thrown in below the knee and it must hit the ground before it reaches the hooker. But Nash seems to throw it high. He seems to pitch it in and throw it up at the chest of the hookers, and that was what he was penalised for.
7 minutes before half-time, Australia lead Great Britain 4 points to 2. All the points today from goal kicks. The first scorers, 1 for Australia and 11 for Great Britain. Graham Langlands, the kicker, 10 metres in from touch. It looks pretty close, but it was just outside that right-hand upright. Fullback Charlton. Tackler Sate. And the penalty, Great Britain.
Sate will be penalised for grabbing hold of the ball in the actual tackle and pulling the ball away from the player's hand. Watch Watkins kicking for the line, because Watkins has been very, very successful. He's gained a lot of ground, especially compared to Langlands. Of course, Langlands has had to contend with a lot of breeze. Once again, another great kick by Watkins.
Watkins is now 31 years of age. He was formerly a rugby union player, and he was certainly an electrifying one when he was out here with the British Lions in 1966. That's Clausen. And the pass across to Hesketh, and that's Millwall. The lock forward Nichols gets his pass to the support. Charlton was right up there, but the knock-on to be played.
And still you can see this short passing method going on with the Great Britain players. This is what happened last week against Queensland, and they didn't meet with much success in the first half, but when they came out in the second half, the Queensland defence started to become a little bit more lax, and that short passing method became very successful.
Millwood, Great Britain ball. Hesketh losing it. And that's the Australian lock, Coote. Now, Rhodonicus to Higgs. And back to Richardson. Out wide to Fulton. Onto Orr, but not the easiest pass to take. Orr picking up the loose ball after all that. No, Great Britain ball. Redfern, Thompson, Nichols, and Nash. Tackled by Beatson and Sate. They're a bit big for him. Nichols. Watkins. Over the top comes Beatson. O'Reilly was there as well, the first man there. The two big men in the Australian lineup, Dixon, Nash. Walters, one of the tacklers, but the man round the ankles was Sate. Just outside the Australian quarter line, that's Thompson. And Dixon losing the ball as he did in an interstate match last week. Quite a bit, Dixon.
And Australia a little bit unlucky not to get a penalty there because Jeff Richardson, the 5'8", was trying to dive for the ball and he was held up by Millwood.
This is 30 metres out from the Australian line. Australia lead 4-2, 3 minutes before half-time. The scrums favour Great Britain by 8-2. By 6-2. Australian ball, this is Rhodonicus, Richardson, and very nearly found the gap, but it closed with Millwood there. Rhodonicus, 12 metres short of the halfway mark. Cootes in the dummy half position, O'Reilly, Beatson, and picked up by Great Britain. Inside Australian territory, it's Hesketh. The centre, a Great Britain player left on the ground further back is Bridges, but now the pass to Nash. Bridges is holding his leg, having a bit of trouble getting to his feet, and now Thompson, there he is. And Dixon flying through on the inside, disappointed that he didn't get the pass. And Nichols knocking it on. Bridges still on the ground with an ankle injury of some kind, or a leg injury at least, and players to be held up. Referee looking across saying no, the trainer can look after him, the game continues.
Well, there we saw for the first time in this game that this British method of moving down the centre of the field using the big forwards might be starting to get a bit of success. It was only a great last-ditch tackle by Ron Coote that stopped that pass from Thompson going back inside to Dixon.
Australian ball, and that's Richardson, the 5'8". Millwood, one of the tacklers, and there he is, number 6. The other one was Nichols, the lock. Mills has moved into the hooking position, or he did while Bridges was injured in that last scrum. Bridges back on his feet, limping around as Australia midway between their quarter line and the halfway mark. Rhodonicus and O'Reilly didn't expect that one, but he got it. There's Beatson standing out wide. There's a chance for Australia out here now as Cronin's pass comes back inside, gathered by Richardson, not knocked on, and Richardson's allowed to go. There's Fulton, just caught by Millwood. Another Great Britain player down is Nichols, the lock forward, further back on the field, but Australia in a strong attacking position, 30 metres out from the line as it comes to Beatson. And back inside to Coote, racing through the lock forward, tries to get it to there's Cronin in possession, back to Higgs. Back again to Warren Orr. Orr flies to the corner, and there's the first try of this test match. Warren Orr scoring it, and Australia lead by 7 points to 2.
And great play by the Australian players, because right from the halfway, they've been bringing players onto the ball, running onto the ball strongly. And the two men who finally set it up were Higgs, who took that close pass, ducked his head as he always does, was then able to step the pass away to Orr.
And let's see Warren Orr's try again on action replay. And back inside to Coote, racing through the lock forward, tries to get it to there's Cronin in possession, back to Higgs. Back again to Warren Orr. Orr flies to the corner, and there's the first try of this test match. Warren Orr scoring it, and Australia lead by 7 points to 2. And the half-time hooter is sounding. Australia leading 7-2, and a tremendous roar then as the local winger Warren Orr, playing in his first test match, scored the opening try of the game. Graham Langlands attempting the conversion. It's away to the right of the uprights. So it's Australia 7, Great Britain 2 at half-time. Great Britain in possession just outside their quarter line. There's been one change in the Great Britain lineup. Nichols, the lock forward, is off the field, and he's been replaced by John Gray in number 14 jersey. And that's Thompson. Bridges, dummy half, and the pass out to John Gray. There he is, the new player on the field in 14 jersey. Tackler was Higgs. Now Watkins trying a kick, but it's down to Langlands on the Australian quarter line. And caught by Watkins, 10 metres short of the halfway mark. And running from dummy half is Coote. O'Reilly, and he's tackled by Gray. Sate. Right on the halfway mark in centre field. Walters, Beatson, and that was Coote sending his pass to Fulton. Bobby Fulton to play it back. Gray, one of the tacklers, just inside Great Britain territory, Rodonicus and Beatson. And O'Reilly's pass, Fulton, and support alongside, but lost ball, Great Britain ball with Bevan in possession. Now Bridges, and that's Watkins. Nash in a dummy half position to Clausen. Penalty, Great Britain.
And that'll be O'Reilly. O'Reilly will be penalised for something which was extremely obvious, and referee Lancashire will call him across and give him a talking to and say, look out for that arm. Interesting to see that Great Britain hooker John Bridges is already limping in this second half. Of course, he had a great first half. He was leading scrums by 5-2 at one stage, and actually at half-time ended up leading them 6-4, which was a surprise because, as I said, in the last game against Queensland, he was defeated by at least 2-1 in the scrums by Johnny Lang.
And Watkins' kick for the penalty takes play 5 or 6 metres short of the halfway mark. Been a strange test match so far. It lacks a lot of atmosphere. It certainly hasn't been a spectacular game by any means. That's Clausen. Bridges to Nash, and there's Mills. Well, dummy, it's Dixon. Millwood, Nash, and Gray. About to pass it to Watkins. Australian defence holding off just outside the Australian quarter line. Watkins, Hesketh in the dummy half position, the captain's side, Nash. Sate, one of the tacklers. The first man there was O'Reilly. On the Australian quarter line in centre field to Clausen, and that's Millwood. Australian ball, Coote very nearly away with it. Sate, dummy half, and Langlands is up into the movement, and Kramer. Beatson working the blind side, back to Langlands. Coote away from Gray's tackle, good striding run, but straightening it up, Fulton. And there's Orr up to the halfway mark. Jeff Richardson, the 5/8 in the dummy half position, Rodonicus, and O'Reilly's pass across to Sate. Beautifully taken, Sate. That's a long pass to Cronin. Australia looking a bit better now. Beatson back again, down the blind side, over the quarter line. This is a bit better. Game starting to liven up a bit. Walters in the dummy half position. Rodonicus and O'Reilly wide. Crash, Grays into him. That's Higgs up alongside of him. The second rower to play it back to Rodonicus, Richardson. And that's Fulton racing through. English player in possession is the 5/8 Millwood. Now Charlton.
Actually, there was no chance of a try there. Fulton was definitely offside, and referee Lancashire knew that.
Bridges. Clausen's pass to Mills. And put down by Watkins. The referee, no knock on. It looked close to a knock on further back, but said it was okay. The referee indicated, so it's 5 metres short of the halfway mark. Great Britain in possession. Clausen, Nash, and that's Gray. Hesketh, the skipper, in the dummy half position. And player coming through is Mills. Australia leading 7 points to 2 after 6 minutes of play in the second half of this first rugby league test, being played at Lang Park in Brisbane in absolutely perfect conditions. Temperature of about 22, maybe 23 degrees. It's very still now as Great Britain inside Australian territory send the pass across. Thompson can't pick it up. It's an Australian ball. Rodonicus, and that's Cronin. Higgs in the dummy half position to distribute to Rodonicus, Beatson, and Richardson, Fulton.
Well, Great Britain's starting to have a little bit of success because they're throwing the ball around much more than they did in the first half. And Australia's starting to throw the ball around, but not moving onto the ball with much confidence. In fact, now that their forwards have done their work, O'Reilly and Beatson down the middle, they're starting to get more tired. We're not seeing a really fluent back line as we thought we might do. And there's a very good back line here, especially when you get Richardson, a good 5/8 to deal to centres like Fulton and Cronin, and two very fast wingers in Orr and Waite. One really wonders why this Australian back line hasn't worked to the present.
Penalty to Great Britain on the halfway mark. Penalties favour Great Britain 8-7. And Clausen is going to kick at goal. It's only 3 metres in from the halfway mark. It's 50 metres from halfway to the goal post. So this is a 47-metre kick. And it's about not very far from centre field. The flags are quite still on the goal posts at both ends of the field now. We had a southwesterly breeze, or a slight southwesterly in the first half. That's dropped away. And it's just a fine, still, beautiful day for the first test at Lang Park today. Clausen is capable of kicking goals from the halfway mark, the 50-metre mark. This 47-metre kick, flags moving ever so slightly. Australia leading 7-2 as Clausen comes in. There it goes. It's there. A good kick from Clausen. Australia lead Great Britain by 7 points to 4. And the only try of the match was scored by Australia.
That kick just scraping over by the barest of centimetres, because it looked as though when it started off that it was going to really have the distance. It looked as though it had the direction, but Langlands at the end decided to take the ball because he wasn't quite sure whether it went over the goal post or not. But still, another 2 points to Great Britain. And if they can start to use these forwards, Australia's defence has been very tight, but forwards like Dixon have got to be used.
And there's Dixon, the only coloured player in the Great Britain side. 30 metres out from the line. And Clausen, rather Mills. Nash. And that's Thompson. Nash. Gray. Tackler underneath was Higgs. Pile driving tackle. Clausen, long pass to Millwood. Thompson and Watkins. Third tackle indicated from referee Don Lancashire. 1 tackle to go. And that's Mills. Clausen.
Well, there's no doubt that Great Britain have plenty of power on the outside flanks, especially with their 2 wingers. Of course, they now have brought in Redfern instead of Atkinson. Redfern with a great lot of speed. Redfern, of course, has played all of this game, but Atkinson played against Queensland. Charlton, a very attacking fullback, and, of course, Bevan on the other wing.
Now, the halfback, and that's Hesketh coming through, running into those heavy tackles. Fulton, one of the tacklers. Thompson. Tackler was Coote, the first man there. Nash working the blind side, and Hesketh. Dixon, Nash, and Gray. Mills losing an Australian ball. wrestled to the ground by Gray after the referee apparently had said play the ball, Walters, and it's a penalty, Australia.
Well, in all fairness to Gray, it did look as though Walters was going to pick up that ball, and whilst lying on his back throw the pass, of course he wasn't effectively held. Australia taking a quick tap.
Beatson's long pass to Waite. And back inside, Langlands into the back line. Graham Langlands, as we used to see him do so often. And now Rodonicus and O'Reilly down the middle. Up to the quarter line. Australia making good ground. There's a big gap in the centre of the Great Britain forwards there. Walters in the dummy half position. Rodonicus is there. There he is. And Sate, the second row forward, out wide. Rodonicus, 15 metres out from the Great Britain line. Sate with a bandage round his right knee, strapping round his head, is in the dummy half position. There he is. And O'Reilly turned back into the lock forward. Lost it. This is Higgs, but the knock on to be played.
Australia still playing the pattern of Rodonicus standing on the edge of the ruck and bringing the big forwards off him, especially Coote and Sate. It means that no pass has really gone from Rodonicus to Richardson, a clean pass, and it means also that Fulton and Cronin and, of course, the two wingers haven't really been given much room to move. But, of course, with about 30 minutes still to go, one would think that Australia is going to have to use this back line.
Great Britain ball. That's Nash. And Charlton, the fullback. Bit to Scott for a light man with so many tacklers there. Higgs finally the man to stop him. And now Clausen. Riley was the last man to get up off Clausen. And it's Thompson. 8 metres short at the halfway mark. This is Mills. Kick down to the Australian quarter line. Waite. Crunch. Bevan, the tackler. His opposite winger. Cronin. Tackled by Bevan. Waite. And Rodonicus. Walters to distribute. O'Reilly. Beatson. Fulton. And Orr. Taught by Redfern. Not quite into touch. Yes, the touch judge's flag is up.
Well, we certainly haven't seen the great heights of a test match that we hope we might do, especially when we compare it to the 1970 test 4 years ago, in which Australia, as I said before, won 37-15. A great effort by the two front rowers. We haven't seen any great individual performances today. In fact, it's just been virtually a bash and barge, and I doubt whether we've seen one punch and not much great antagonism during the game.
Another Great Britain ball, Charlton. And he's just about through. A neat tackle from Langlands. 30 metres out from the Australian line in centre field, that's Millwood. And Gray. Australian defence having a rest, isn't it? Hesketh. And Dixon. Cronin the tackler. Nash. And Watkins. Rodonicus is the man round the ankles. Bridges, the hooker in the dummy half position. And second row forward, a long pass to Bevan. And the knock-on to be played.
Well, of course, that was a very controversial one because obviously Bevan was trying to put the ball back in field. He dropped the ball onto his foot to try and kick it. And referee Lancashire ordering that his foot missed the ball, and therefore he picked it up and ruling a knock-on. 15
minutes of play into the second half. Australia leading Great Britain by 7 points to 4. An Australian ball, penalty Australia.
It's going to be the halfback. Halfback Nash penalised for not retiring behind his scrum. Or actually retired and didn't, or he came around far too quickly before the ball got out of the scrum.
Langlands will take the kick for touch. And the penalty kick takes play midway between the Australian quarter line and the halfway mark. Walters to take the second kick from the penalty. That's Beatson. Sate, Rodonicus, 8 metres short of the halfway mark. Sate and Coote, and here's Fulton, blood streaming down from his right eye, or right side of his face. O'Reilly, Beatson, over the halfway mark, and that's Langlands. Bridges, the player left on the ground, is the Great Britain hooker again, who's been limping for a bit of the second half. It hasn't affected his scrum performance though. Back to Higgs. And that's Cronin. Bridges has won all 3 scrums for Great Britain in the second half, and he's still looking a bit sick, but he's going to limp up to the scrum. He really has a sore left ankle, it appears.
Well, of course, that's the left ankle that he's been limping on ever since he came onto the second half. And, of course, as I said before, he is winning first half scrums by 5-2 at one stage, 6-4 at half-time, and now, amazingly, leading the scrums by 9-4. And I've no doubt that the Great Britain players want to see Bridges on there. In fact, they'd probably carry him as long as he could pack down in the scrums and keep winning the scrums. And one wonders now whether Australia's going to have to bring on a reserve and going to have to bring Johnny Lang into this scrum to try and counteract this dominance of the Great Britain forwards.
The Great Britain reserve is on the sideline, about to come onto the field. It'll be Dave Eckersley. We'll wait to see what happens after this scrum. Bridges might leave the field. Eckersley, of course, is a back. They've used their forward reserve. 2 reserves in the test match for both teams. Australian ball, Fulton. Nash is the first man there. Thompson to assist. There's Sate. And it's only an ankle tackle by Nash that stopped him as he'd beaten most of the forwards. Now to Beatson. Coote was racing through, but it's back to Rodonicus. And again, a nice tackle from Nash. Walters pass, O'Reilly slipping it back. Coote, a bit lucky to retain possession. And Coote getting plenty of treatment, isn't he? Just inside the Great Britain quarter line.
Well, Dixon going in there like Cassius played. He had a couple of goes, and I don't think he was really warned by referee Lancashire. In fact, I doubt whether referee Lancashire will really take anything drastic. Now, there'll be a penalty, quite obviously, against the Great Britain players. But as you can see, in the play of the ball, Coote still wanted to play the ball. Dixon slipped him one, and Coote decided he'd had enough, so he was going to go down. I don't think he was punched down, but Coote decided he was going to sit down and try and get the penalty. And Australia will get a penalty, and it could be a very handy one, too, with only 3 points up.
Australia leading 7-4 after 18 minutes of play in the second half. Graham Langlands to take the penalty kick at goal, 2 metres in from the quarter line and about 14 metres in from touch. So it's not so very far off centre. And there's an English player coming onto the field. That'll be Dave Eckersley in 15 jersey, and I see the Bridges is about to leave the field. Yes, Bridges is leaving the field, and Eckersley is on. A good kick, it's there. And Australia lead 9-4.
And now it will be interesting to just see how this Great Britain side reorganises itself, because they've only got 2 emergencies. John Gray has been on. They can have no more emergencies now in this game. Eckersley is only a back, and I'd say that he's got to move to the outside centre position, which means that someone from the forward back line has got to move into the forwards. And it looks as though it could be Hesketh himself. Hesketh, the Great Britain captain, looks as though he could be moving into the pack.
Waite, the Australian right winger. Dixon, the tackler, and a pretty vigorous tackle too, as usual. O'Reilly, and that's the hooker to Higgs. Eckersley was the tackler in 15 jersey, the new player on the field. He is more or less a fullback, Eckersley, and so here's Beatson. 10 metres short of the halfway mark. O'Reilly, and caught by Mills and Clausen. Rodonicus, Richardson. Gets his kick in. It's a good kick from Richardson. Will run into touch, I'd think. Yes, very close. Yes, it's there. And Richardson, another one of the Brisbane players or Queensland players in the Australian side, playing in his first rugby league test match.
Well, of course, Richardson has certainly been limited in his kicking because of the fact that Australia haven't been winning the scrums 9-4. And, of course, now with Bridges off, it's going to be interesting if Australia can really dominate the scrums. I'm sure in the last 20 minutes of this game, Langlands is going to say to Richardson, keep us down in the Great Britain half.
Hesketh has moved into the lock position in the scrum. And there are a few other changes there, but it's on the Great Britain quarter line. Penalty Australia on the scrum.
Well, I think everyone in the crowd could see exactly what that was for because of the hooker lying down. And, well, I thought Bridges was bad enough, but that hook was even worse.
Gray is hooking for Great Britain with Hesketh at lock. And Eckersley, of course, has moved into the centres with Watkins. Now, this kick is 10 metres in from touch. On the quarter line, Graham Langlands, the Australian captain coach, he has kicked 3 out of 6 goals today. 2 of them went perilously close, but they missed. Play has been in progress close on 22 minutes in the second half, and Australia lead by 9-4. Langland's kick. And it's there.
Well, one feels that Australia's really just starting to warm up now. I was just starting to say there before that Ron Coote has had a magnificent game here for Australia today, returning after a period of absence from the Australian side, has given some great cover defence. We've seen a couple of breaks by the Great Britain players. It's only been Coote who stopped, and of course in attack he's been in everything too.
So the odds are against Great Britain now. Australia leading 11-4, only 18 minutes left in this first test match at Lang Park in Brisbane. And players midway between the Australian quarter line and the halfway mark, Walters, to play the ball back. Coote. Lost ball. Great Britain ball. And the player in possession is Mills. 10 metres inside Australian territory to Dixon and Nash. And that's Hesketh. .30 metres out from the Australian line. Nash to distribute to Clausen, and that's Eckersley. Away from Richardson, and Cronen's the tackler. Clausen, Bevan. Very fast winger, Bevan. The halfback dummies on everywhere. Thompson back inside to Millwood, back to the halfback Nash, and Nash bowled over a great tackle. If anyone's very, very close, the referee playing the knock-on.
Well, one really wonders why Great Britain didn't score that try. In fact, I didn't see the final part of it because I was watching Hesketh. Hesketh has come into this forward pack, and it is he who's starting to reorganise these forwards. I can see him saying now, settle it down, settle it down. But he was the pivot forward that started that move off, and that's exactly what Great Britain need. They need someone in there organising those forwards, and they need someone like Colin Dixon who's going to come up with a little bit of biff and a bit of fire to put a bit of fire back into this Great Britain side. Australia definitely very lucky there not to be down by another 5 points, or not to give another 5 points away.
Australia leading Great Britain by 11-4. 17 minutes left in the match, and Great Britain player receiving attention is Redfern, the winger. The second and third test matches in this series will be played in Sydney on the 6th of July and the 20th of July, the third test. Redfern to receive ambulance attention off the field, and play will continue. The scrum to pack down 5 metres out from the Australian line.
Of course, Great Britain in trouble. They've already used their 2 emergencies in the second half.
So they're down to 12 men. The referee ordering the ball to go into the scrum again.
No, I think
it's
penalty.
A penalty to Great Britain. I didn't see that penalty awarded first of all, but it's right in front.
Great Britain will get 2 of the points, of 2 of the 5 points that they deserve from that last movement.
Now Watkins is going to take the kick at goal. He set a record in England last season in rugby league, kicking over 200 goals for the season.
It was 221, and I see that he scored another 200 goals this season too, Arthur.
16 minutes left. Australia leading 11-4. It should be 11-6 after this.
Unusual to just watch the style of Watkins. Look, he doesn't line the ball up. It's a real soccer style kicking with the instep.
And there it is. So it's Australia 11, Great Britain 4. A few fisticuffs in the crowd right down in front of our broadcasting position in the outer. 11-6 in favour of Australia. 11-6. Langlands. And Redfern is leaving the field of play altogether. He's going to the dressing sheds apparently. So this is Charlton, Great Britain down to 12 men. And that's Clausen. Midway between the Great Britain quarter line and the halfway mark, Dixon. Beatson, one of the tacklers, and the other one is a little halfback, Rodonicus. Referee indicating that it hit an Australian player the ball, so there are 4 more tackles to go. Gray. Higgs, the tackler, just short of the halfway mark to Clausen. A long pass, Millwood. He likes those long passes, Clausen, cutting out players. Hesketh. And Eckersley, left-footed kick for the line. It could be a good kick, but it won't find touch. Langlands covers it. And can't beat the first tackle. Bevan, the winger, the tackler. Waite, the Australian winger. Eckersley, the tackler. The assistance from Bevan. O'Reilly and Sate. Walters, Beatson, Richardson, Cronin, Fulton. And not quite a touch. Yes, he is. The touch. Judge's flag is up now. 10. Short of the halfway mark, and it's a penalty to Australia.
Yes, the Great Britain players penalised, and they're arguing there, but I've said there's no doubt that referee Lancashire